Hello everybody, thanks for checking out this video. Now on this gloomy autumn day I would like to show you 14 different types of philodendrons that I've been successfully growing in pon. Now you might ask yourself why 14 and not 10 or 15? Well, the reason is that this morning when I went through my apartment looking for all these pon lovers, of all possible numbers, I ended up finding 13 different ones. So since I didn't want to jinx my day with this unlucky number, I quickly potted up this cutting of a philodendron Florida Beauty, so now we have the very safe number of 14 different philodendrons. Now this one here, as I said, I just potted up now, but the other 13 that I will show you in a second have been growing in pon for quite a long time and they all seem to like it. So let's go and have a look. Okay, so let's start with these guys. These are Philodendron bipennifolium aurea yellow violin plants. I just call them yellow violins to keep things simple, since the leaf shape looks a bit like a violin and the new leaves come out yellowish, as you can see on the plant on the left here. Now all the plants you'll see in this video are actually cuttings that I first rooted in water, so pon is their real first substrate. The next philodendron is this adorable micans cutting. It had only 2 leaves when I put it in pon, and by the number of new leaves that this plant has produced since then, I'd say that you can definitely grow this velvety philodendron in a pon substrate. Alright, here we got philodendron silver sword triplets, and in my experience this philodendron grows like a weed in any substrate, so it also thrives in pon. Now you might have noticed that when you put your plant in a relatively small container filled with pon, they kinda tend to grow like a miniature or bonsai philodendron, which I quite like since it doesn't always have to be about who has the biggest leaves when it comes to philodendrons. At least that's my opinion. Next up are these philodendrons painted lady, another very easy care philodendron, and these posh ladies seem to quite enjoy growing in pon. Now personally I think pon is great when the plants are small or medium sized, but when they grow too big there is the risk that the plant becomes unstable, especially when the pon is dry and very loose. I once had a plant like that and one day it just fell over. And of course there was more pon on my floor than grains in the desert, so I learned that lesson the hard way. Now even the more uncommon philodendrons, like this philodendron ornatum cf, can be grown in pon without any problem. And as I said before, I really like the way they grow like miniature versions of the mother plant. Because if you grow a plant like this ornatum cf in a big pot and in soil, this plant will end up growing really big and tall. But in pon they tend to stay more compact, almost like small pieces of living art, which all plants are anyway, at least in my opinion. Next up are these philodendrons red emerald. And here you can see what I said before. The plant on the left is growing quite tall, and even though I did give it a stick, this plant is becoming a little bit unstable, because the stick can't go very deep in this small pot, and when the pon is dry, the whole thing just might collapse. So I prefer this little guy here on the right, who has no stability problems whatsoever. So what about self-heading philodendrons, like this philodendron Birkin? Well, this top cutting is living in pon for almost a year now and it's doing just fine. These self-heading philodendrons are actually perfect because they naturally grow in a very compact and slow way. So I'd say these are perfect candidates for a life in pon. So here we have a philodendron werneri rotonda mini cutting in pon. And I have to say that of all my pon philodendrons, this is the one that I would least recommend to put in pon. It's the smallest of plants, but definitely alive. It was one leaf cutting and you can still see that big leaf on the plant. But after that, the poor thing started to grow in a shingly way, but since it has nothing to attach to, it decided to just grow midget leaves for the time being, which is actually fine by me. Now, a philodendron I would definitely recommend for growing in pon is this philodendron Malay Gold. It started off as a top cutting with just 2 leaves, and since I put it in pon, it's just one very happy plant. Although, if it keeps growing as fast as it is doing now, I will have to face the stability issue sooner or later. But for now, this is a great pon philodendron. Okay, this philodendron tenutype cutting has been living in pon for more or less 6 months now. It took quite a bit of time before it took off, but now it made 2 new leaves recently, so I think this plant will do just fine in pon. Now, I do let the pond dry out somewhat before I add more water, but mostly there is quite a bit of constant humidity surrounding the plant, which is something that most philodendrons really like, so I would say that's another plus with this substrate. Another ideal philodendron to put in pon, in my experience, is this burley marks. And if you look at all those roots at the bottom of this guy, I would say it's time to repot it in a bigger pot with pon. And let's call that repon, which I have never done before, but I think it shouldn't be very complicated. Yet another more uncommon philodendron that I put in pon is this philodendron undulatum 1. It's actually really enjoying being in this substrate, but you might notice that this plant is somewhat leaning towards the floor and the leaves are also growing downwards. Now, this is simply because it gets artificial light from a growing lamp that's way below the plant. So instead of growing up, he's growing downwards towards the light, which is no doubt something I should fix in the near future. Now, the very last pon-loving philodendron is actually my favorite one of all 14 plants that I showed you today. And I don't know if you could guess what philodendron this might be. Well, this is actually a baby philodendron golden dragon, and it just loves growing in pon. As you might know, philodendrons are great shapeshifters when it comes to their leaves. And although the leaves you see here are just baby leaves, you can tell that some of these leaves are slowly but surely trying to reach the mature leaf shape of the golden dragon. In other words, this is yet another great candidate for a life in pon. Okay, that's all for today's video. If you have experience with growing philodendrons in pon, please let me know in the comment section. If you like this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel, which is mostly, but not always, about philodendrons. For now, I'll say thank you very much for watching and I wish you a very nice day. Bye bye.